of psychology of work called job analysis. This is actually one of my favorite chapters. Job analyses are very interesting. I like to teach this chapter. It's quite interesting to talk about how they're performed and what they lead to. Let's start with the definition of job analysis, a definition by the National Personnel Association. They define a job analysis as a process which results in establishing elements of job and ascertaining the human qualifications necessary for its useful performances. Basically, a job analysis tells us exactly what a job is and how to do it well. Here's our textbook definition of job analysis. The textbook says a job analysis is the systematic process which helps you identify the job tasks and responsibilities, KSAOs, and critical incidents faced on the job. KSAOs are the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes needed to perform the job. So basically, a job analysis tells you what needs to be done, the tasks and responsibilities, how to do it well, what human attributes are needed to do it, and the critical incidents, the important things that you'll have to face on this job. Another important acronym we'll be using in this chapter is SME, which stands for Subject Matter Expert. The SMEs are the workers and managers who are consulted by job analysts, and they give all the information used in the job analysis. Two important results of a job analysis are the job description and job specifications. Both are pieces of writing that come out of the job analysis. The job description basically includes the responsibilities and basic information about the job. It's a job-centered description. Whereas the job specification is more employee-centered. It includes the qualifications and demands on employees who might be interested in this job. But both the job description, which is job-centered, and the job specifications, which are employee-centered, can only be written by consulting the job analysis. So why is a job analysis so important? In addition to leading to the job description and job qualifications, it also helps determine the specific qualifications needed to do the job. It provides important information about the job before trying to recruit the best people. It helps us choose and develop valid selection procedures for hiring new people, and helps us develop strong criterion measures. Criterion measures are what you use to measure job performance. Once somebody gets the job and you need to give them a performance review, you use criterion measures which come from the job analysis. A job analysis also contributes to job design and job evaluation. Job design is basically an analysis of the organization which includes the job analysis to identify the best way to allocate the various tasks and responsibilities within the organization. So once the job analyses are done for all the different jobs in the company, the managers or the boss can better decide how to split up the different tasks and responsibilities. Finally, a job evaluation is a particular type of job analysis used to determine the relative value that jobs have within an organization. We'll talk about job evaluations soon. They're very interesting because that's what helps determine pay. Before we move on, I'd like to introduce some important terms. Some of these we've looked at already. In the blue boxes on the left, you'll see a functional category. A functional category is a group of tasks that perform the same function, that lead to the same function. In this example, the functional category is responding to customer complaints. The 3 tasks are answering calls, replying to emails, and live chatting with customers. All 3 of these tasks make up the functional category of responding to customer complaints. When writing a job analysis, it's important to group tasks into functional categories. Underneath, in the black box, is the definition of a job analysis survey. This is a questionnaire given to a large number of employees about the job in order to conduct the job analysis. Let's remember KSAO. It's an important acronym. Stands for knowledge, skills, abilities, and other. These are the human characteristics necessary to perform a job or desired to perform the job. On the right-hand side, we have SMEs, which are subject matter experts. This is someone who knows a lot about the job and is consulted by the job analyst. SMEs can include supervisors and incumbents. Supervisors oversee the incumbents. These are managers, bosses. These usually make very good SMEs because they've probably been there for a while or know a lot about the job and the organization. Incumbents can also be SMEs. They're the people actually doing the job. They might not be quite as qualified or quite as experienced in the job, but they're actually doing the job every day. So in one respect, they have more experience, right? They may know a lot more about the job than their supervisors do. It's important to include both supervisors and incumbents in your group of SMEs when you're conducting a job analysis. All right, so when you're first starting your job analysis, a good place to start is with the government sources of job analysis data. And there's two sources of this data. The first one is called the DOT, which stands for Dictionary of Occupational Titles. This is a paper book published by the US government, and it actually contains short job descriptions of every job in the whole country. The problem is that the last edition was published in 1991. So as you can imagine, there are lots of new jobs that have been created since 1991 and lots of jobs that have transformed or changed since then. So while this might be good to consult for certain types of jobs, it won't work for all jobs since it's not very current. A second, probably more useful source of information that also comes from the government is called ONET. ONET stands for Occupational Information Network. This is an online database developed by the US Department of Labor, which basically has the job analyses for all the different jobs. It has tons of information on the requirements and experience needed for the job and basically what the job is. All of the data on this site are collected through surveys from employees around the US who actually work in these jobs. It's actually a very cool website. For some reason, it doesn't work as well from my phone, but when I visit it from my iPad or my computer, it has a really neat layout of all the data and the information. You can punch in any job and it gives you the necessary qualifications, experience, job requirements, and a lot of neat information on salaries and all sorts of things. I suggest you check out the ONET website if you have a chance. Moving on. Some data collection methods for job analysis. So as we mentioned, the job analyst is going to consult with the SMEs to get all of the information, but they can observe SMEs working in their job, or they can interview them, or they can administer a survey. When they're doing an observation, it's very useful for technical jobs where the job analyst might not fully understand it through an interview, and it's better to just watch the job with their own eyes. An interview is where a job analyst meets with the SMEs and asks them questions about their work. And this can be done one-on-one or in small groups, which are called focus groups. Finally, the job analyst can send out a survey or administer a survey, which is a written set of questions. And the good part about a survey is that lots of SMEs can take it at once. Here's an example of some interview questions that a job analyst might ask to an SME during an interview. We don't have to read all of them. I'll read you, I know it's a little blurry. I'll read the first few. Number 1, what are the major responsibilities for the position? Number 2, for each responsibility, what critical tasks are performed? 3, describe a typical day in the job. What materials are used? What equipment is used? What forms must be completed and then obtain these forms? What documents and manuals are used and obtain those if possible? What is the working environment? What are the physical demands? What kinds of hours or shifts? For each task described earlier, what knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics do the workers need? To whom does the person report? And on and on. And this is just some of these are just some of the questions. The interviews are quite lengthy. They really go into detail because it's important that the job analyst truly understand all the different aspects of the job. So now that we understand what a job analysis is and what type of data collection methods are used, we're going to look at 4 primary job analysis methods. The first 2 are work-oriented and are really focused more on the work being done, the job being done, the tasks. Whereas the second 2 are worker-oriented and focus more on the human characteristics needed to do the job, the behaviors needed to do the job. The first work-oriented job analysis method that we're going to learn about is called the task KSA analysis. This one's personally my favorite. This one, it has 5 steps, and the first step is to generate a list of critical job tasks. The way that you are supposed to list the tasks is with a task statement. Task statements are made with an action, an object, materials, and a purpose. If you look at the table below, you'll see some examples of task statements. The first example says, assemble burgers using food ingredients to serve customers. You'll see there's an action, assemble, object, burgers, materials, food ingredients, and a purpose, to serve customers. In a different job analysis, we may create a task statement that says, measure lumber using a measuring tape to prepare for the carpenter. Or in a different job analysis, we might create the task statement, review news articles using a word processor to eliminate errors. But each job would have many, many, many task statements like this, not just a few. Once the list of critical job tasks has been created, the next step is to generate a list of KSAOs needed for these tasks. Remember, KSAOs are the human characteristics, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that a person would need to do these tasks. Now, once the tasks and KSAOs have all been identified, the next 2 steps involve determining criticality. Criticality is how critical, how important the tasks and KSAOs are to the job. To determine the criticality of each task, we use a task criticality survey. I'm going to zoom in on the task criticality survey for you. It lists the tasks down the side. In this case, the job analysis is for a professor. The job tasks include develops course syllabus, writes notes on course materials, writes test items. You'll see they're actually written as task statements. They have the purpose and everything. Writes notes on course materials to support student learning. Writes test items to assess student knowledge. So all the task statements are written down the side, and the SMEs are asked to rate these tasks by how important they are. They're asked, how important is this task for the job of professor, and how much time is spent on this task relative to others. This is just a small snippet of the job task questionnaire, but there's actually a lot of tasks that go down the side that need to be assessed for how critical they are to doing the job. After assessing the criticality of the job tasks, we assess the criticality of the KSAOs. Remember, KSAOs are the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes that people need to do the job. Down the side are the different KSAOs that the SMEs have already identified are important for this job. And across the top are questions like, how important is this KSAO for the job of professor? How much time is spent using this KSAO relative to others? To what degree does possessing this KSAO differentiate good from poor performance? And then the SMEs are asked to do each KSAO at a time. So knowledge of course content, how important is it? How much time is spent? And to what degree does knowledge of course content make you good at this job? They're asked to do this for all the different KSAOs. The final and 5th step, after determining the criticality of the tasks and the criticality of the KSAOs, is to administer a task KSAO linkage survey. This third survey, final survey, basically asks the SMEs to link the tasks to the KSAOs. Which skills are needed to complete which tasks? I'll zoom in on that one. You can see the tasks are written down the left side. Tasks like develops course syllabus, writes notes on course materials, and across the top are the skills or knowledge needed. Knowledge of course content, knowledge of teaching, knowledge of university rules. And for each task, the SMEs are asked to rate how important the different skills or knowledge is for the task. This is the linkage survey. So as you can see, the 5 steps in the task KSA analysis are to determine all the tasks, determine the KSAOs, then rate the criticality of the tasks and the criticality of the KSAOs, and finally determine the linkage between tasks and KSAOs. All of this will lead to the final job analysis, which will be written up in written form. Another work-oriented method of job analysis is called the critical incidence technique. The critical incidence technique documents examples of critical situations, very important things that happened that were faced by job incumbents, faced by the workers. It also documents the examples of good and poor ways to handle these incidents and the results of handling them that way. Each example in the critical incidence technique includes an important incident, positive and negative responses, and the consequences of these responses. During the job analysis interview, the SMEs are asked to think about some critical situations faced on the job. So the SMEs come up with these critical situations themselves, and then they're asked to note examples of poor and good responses that they've seen employees take. So in this case, SMEs will probably be managers or heads of departments, and they're talking about how they've seen their employees respond to different things that happened and how those different responses turned out. Here are 2 examples of critical incidents. The top one has the incident, which is a customer calls in angry because a product they ordered is defective. They yell at the customer service worker. So that's the incident. It's a critical, important thing that happened. Here's the positive response that one worker had. The customer service worker stays calm, tries to show concern for the customer, and tries to find a way to solve the problem. Here's the result. In the end, the customer is satisfied with the transaction and thanks the customer service worker. So that was a positive response with a positive result. Moving over to the next box is the negative response to this incident. The customer service worker loses their cool and responds rudely to the customer. As a result, the customer becomes more upset and asks to speak to their supervisor. So, as you can see, the negative response led to a negative consequence. I won't read the second example, it's kind of long, but feel free to pause the video if you would like to read the second example now. This next job analysis method is a worker-oriented one. This one focuses more on the people doing the job rather than the tasks themselves. The position analysis questionnaire, called PAQ, is a pre-written standardized survey. It has 195 questions or items and can be used for all sorts of different jobs. The survey can be done online, it's automatically scored. It's been around for a long time, so we know it's probably pretty good. It has thousands of entries in it already. It's easy to use, it's good for comparing different jobs, but the downsides are that it's not as detailed as other methods, since it's only done by survey and not an in-person interview or observation. And the other downside to the PAQ is it's sort of hard to read. It's written at a college reading level, so some SMEs, depending on their job, may not have college level reading skills, and they may not be able to complete the survey. The final job analysis method we're going to talk about isn't really a method in itself. It's sort of an extra step that's done to complement the job analysis. This one's called competency modeling, and it really focuses on the people who do the job the best. The competency model involves describing the general characteristics needed for all the jobs in the company, and they compare series of jobs across a range of jobs. The competency model also often includes the company's values or mission statements, which is something that none of the other methods really look at. The competency model focuses on top performers more than on everybody. And like I said, it's more of a complement to the job analysis. It's a good thing to add. How do the best guys do it, and what is this company about? But it doesn't really go as deep into what the job is as other methods do. All right, we've finished discussing the different methods of job analysis. Let's talk about some of the things that could go wrong with the job analysis and how we avoid them. One is that our SMEs, our subject matter experts, for the most part, are providing subjective judgments. There's not really an objective, numerical, factual measure for jobs. They think of stuff. They tell you what is done on the job, what's important. It's sort of like their opinion when you ask them what's needed or what's important for this job, or how is a good way to handle it or a bad way to handle a critical incident. It can be very subjective. A good way to avoid this, or to avoid the problems inherent in subjective statements, is to consult lots of different SMEs. So then if we're not worried about one person's opinion. Another issue with job analysis is that the long surveys and the long interviews involved can lead to boredom, fatigue, or carelessness. But there's something called a carelessness index, which actually helps correct this. The carelessness index consists of bogus job analysis items throughout the survey. They're total nonsense, sometimes really silly, and have nothing to do with the job. But they put them in the long surveys to make sure people are paying attention. So if the SME checks off too many of the nonsense stuff, we basically can decide he's not paying attention, and we throw out his data. We don't count his survey because he answered a bunch of the carelessness index questions. So who makes the best SMEs? SMEs should be representative of the demographic makeup of the organization and of the applicant pool. What this means is if it's all males working at your organization, it would be okay to only have male SMEs. But if males and females work in the organization, we should have male and female SMEs for the job analysis. And we're not just looking at the workers who work there now, we're also looking at the applicant pool. So if people are applying from different ethnicities or different languages, different genders, we want to make sure that our SMEs are representative of that. Secondly, SMEs should be inclusive of all the groups in the organization. So if there's different sections or units in the organization, we want to make sure that SMEs come from all of them. Third, SMEs should be experts with various degrees of experience. We don't want only the new guys, and we don't want only the veterans who've been there forever. We want people who are at various degrees of experience, right? We want some guys who've been around forever. They know all the ins and outs of the company and how it started and everything. And we want some of the newer guys who are coming in with the newer skills and might be more focused on what it really takes to complete their job. Finally, SMEs do not need to be the top performers. So we don't only want the best people in the company. Again, we want variety. All four of these basically say that the SMEs need to have variety. We need people that are representative of demographics, of different parts of the organization, different levels of experience, and different levels of performance. Earlier, I mentioned job evaluation as one of the things that can result from a job analysis. And we'll talk about job evaluation now. The job evaluation is how job analysis can actually affect the employee's pay. A job evaluation is used to determine the relative value of jobs within the organization. Relative value means how much value they have relative to one another. And then this information helps with the issue of compensation. Compensation is the pay levels, determining pay levels. So let's talk about what a job evaluation is and how we do it. Fairness is a really important factor in the way that employees interpret their relationship with their job, with their organization, with their superiors. So compensation systems need to assure that the pay systems are fair. That is to say that Well, let's look at internal equity. Internal equity ensures that an employee's pay is fair relative to the other employees in their organization. So that means that a manager should probably make more money than the people he or she is managing, right? We look at the value an employee has to their workplace and structure the pay accordingly. Secondly, there's external equity. This assures that an employee's pay is fair relative to others in the external labor market. So for this, we have to look at other organizations, other companies. What do they pay their secretaries? What do they pay their janitors? What do they pay their engineers or their electricians? We look at the job market and make sure that it's fair compared to other companies, as well as fair within the company. The way that a job evaluation progresses to salary is the job evaluation leads to weighting or valuing of the job within the company, which then leads, or within and outside of the company, which leads to a salary structure, and finally the salary of each employee. Let's look at the steps of performing a job evaluation. So the first step is to determine the internal equity. As we talked about, that means the relative value within the company. To do this, job analysts often assign points to each position based on compensable factors like their working conditions, the education and skills needed, and experience. And these points determine their relative value within the organization. If you look at the example on the right, the manager has 952 points, the most in the organization, followed by the engineer with 750. Then it goes all the way down to 350 for the secretary, and close below that is 325 for the truck driver. These points are used to determine the relative value within the organization. So within this company, one could say that the manager is approximately 3 times more important than the truck driver. The second step is to determine external equity. To do this, job analysts conduct salary surveys of the market. They go to other organizations and find out what they pay their secretaries or what they pay their engineers to make it fair. But the third step involves taking some other considerations, because sometimes the market rates for jobs don't always match the relative values of these jobs. That's to say that 1 and 2 don't match up. Let's look at this same example where the secretary has slightly more points than the truck driver. In this company, we've determined through internal equity that secretaries are a little bit more valuable to the company than the truck drivers are. This could be because of their working conditions, the needed experience or skills, any of this. However, when conducting an external equity salary survey of the market, the job analyst may have found that in other companies, the truck drivers make more than the secretaries. This could present a problem for this company. So we need to take in other considerations. What are their job duties? Why are the other truck drivers and secretaries in the market paid what they are? And one of the reasons that perhaps truck drivers in the market may be paid more than secretaries is called comparable worth. Comparable worth tells us that many traditional female jobs are often paid less than traditionally male jobs. So while secretaries are traditionally female, truck drivers are traditionally male. So the market may dictate that truck drivers should get paid more than secretaries simply because males often get paid more than females, and traditionally male jobs are often compensated better than traditionally female jobs. We're almost done with Chapter 3. We'll talk real quick about a new term and a new approach to job analysis. The new term is called work analysis. This basically says that since jobs are fluid and quickly changing in today's market, it's more important to focus on the work being done than how to do the job. Basically, what's being produced, what's being done, not how do you do it. And a new approach to job analysis is called cognitive task analysis. This goes beyond the traditional task analysis by focusing specifically on the cognitive processes involved in doing the job. So what is your mind doing while you complete the task? This is a more human-centered, worker-centered approach to job analysis. And I personally think it's very important to doing a job analysis. All right, we're at our chapter summary. I'm going to take my time going through the chapter summary. Feel free to pause and take a break if you'd like first. The chapter summary is very important for the quizzes and exams, so be sure you're paying attention. It can't hurt to watch the chapter summary part of the video a few times. A job analysis is the systematic process which helps you identify the job tasks and responsibilities, KSAOs, and critical incidents faced on the job. A job analysis informs employers on qualifications, recruitment, selection, and job performance. That first bullet point is the most important one on the whole slide. It describes what a job analysis is and what it does. Second, we have the definition of job specifications. Job specifications are a brief overview of the requirements for doing the job, including the minimum qualifications necessary to do the job. This is focusing more on what's needed from the worker. The job specification is written after the job analysis is complete. A job description is also written after the job analysis is complete, and the job description is an overview of the job, typically 1 to 2 pages outlining what the job entails. A job evaluation is a particular type of job analysis used to determine the relative value that jobs have within the organization, and it's used to determine compensation, relative pay. Job design uses job analysis to identify the best way to allocate various tasks and responsibilities among different jobs. So job design is what managers use job analysis for to help them in improving their organization. Next, we discuss the government data sources for job analysis. There's the DOT and ONET. DOT is published by the U.S. government in paper form, but it's pretty outdated. ONET is, in my opinion, the better source of government data. It's an online database, and you can get basically all the job analyses for every job on ONET. ONET provides information on experience and job requirements. It's really good to consult ONET when you're considering a career switch or applying for a new job, because you can make sure that you have or can get the experience and requirements necessary for the job. Next, we'll discuss data collection methods. There's observations, which are one of the most basic ways to learn about a job. Observations are done by watching incumbents and SMEs doing their job. There's a job analysis interview, where the job analyst meets with the SMEs and asks questions. And there's a job analysis survey, which large numbers of employees can complete at one time. Moving over to the right-hand side of the slide, here are 2 work-oriented job analysis methods. First, a work-oriented job analysis method is a job analysis method in which the primary unit of analysis is the characteristics of the job. These methods focus more on the job, not on the worker. The first one is the task KSA analysis, where we generate the tasks using that special task statement format, and then a list of KSAOs, determine their criticality and how they're linked to each other. The second type of work-oriented job analysis method is the critical incident technique. This one documents examples of critical incidents, the positive and negative ways that employees handled those incidents, and the outcomes. The worker-oriented job analysis approaches focus more on the characteristics of the employee rather than the job itself. The first one is the PAQ, which is a pre-made online survey, and it's not very detailed, but it's easy to do and easy to score. And the second is competency modeling, which is more of an added extra to the job analysis, and that one describes the job characteristics needed to do the job well. And the competency modeling is the one that also includes the company's mission statement and values. Don't forget that SME stands for subject matter expert, and KSAO stands for knowledge, skills, abilities, and other. The SMEs are who we consult when we do the job analysis. That's where we get all our information from, is the SMEs. And KSAOs are the human attributes needed to do the job. Finally, at the bottom, we discuss internal equity, which is fairness within the organization, and external equity is fairness between organizations. These two kinds of equity are things that we discuss during the job evaluation, which determines the employee's pay. So remember, we need internal equity, which rates the different jobs within the organization and how much value they have, and external equity, which does market surveys to see what other companies are paying similar employees. Next, there's the carelessness index, which is something put into those long surveys that the SMEs have to answer to make sure they're paying attention. And the final term is comparable worth, which is that traditionally female jobs are often paid less than traditionally male jobs. We'll talk a lot more about wage gap in the coming weeks. For now, you just need to know that term, comparable worth. All right, that's it for Chapter 3. Please feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any questions at all, or if you would like me to clarify any part of Chapter 3. This is the last chapter for week 1, and I will see you in a few weeks for week 2 when we continue with Chapter 4.